Oh hey everybody, I'm just having myself a nice hearty bunch of bananas since I've recently been following the words of the great I the monkey, an absolutely phenomenal philosopher, with his most famous quote being, "I really love bananas." And people wonder why Aristotle has been so quiet since then. Super Monkey Ball is considered the cornerstone of a healthy society to every Matthew Smart in existence. Easily one of the best puzzle games out there. While marble rolling games in both the virtual world and real world are about as common as belly button lint, Super Monkey Ball stands out on top with its simple and tight gameplay mixed with level design so brutal that it makes Dark Souls look like it was made by Fisher-Price. Add a handful of stellar party games and party game, and you have a prime candidate for game night with the boys. Even though the GameCube was far from Nintendo's most successful console, Super Monkey Ball still sold pretty well and became a standout title for the platform by both critics and consumers alike, at least here in the States. In Japan, it didn't reach the numbers the team was hoping for. Regardless, the response was still good enough for Sega and Amusement Vision to develop a sequel, and us North Americans would be graced with its holy presence just a year later on August 26th, 2002, aka the same day that Super Mario Sunshine dropped. For every angel, there's also a devil to keep the balance. Super Monkey Ball 2. To say that I love this game is a massive understatement. It is genuinely one of my top 10 favorite games of all time. And I haven't even properly figured that list out yet. I can at least say that it's my favorite game on the GameCube, that's for sure. While the first game was awesome, it obviously had its shortcomings. The difficulty balance was never the smoothest, with some pretty harsh spikes in a number of cases. Some of the level design felt very uninspired just to pad out the quantity of them, and Monkey Golf is the reason why I have trust issues. I can still have a lot of fun with Super Monkey Ball today, given my years and years of experience with it, but I know not everyone has the patience to put up with it, and it was very clear that there was room for improvement. And the sequel was put in a very promising position, as this time, it wasn't just a simple arcade port. This one was being made from the ground up for the GameCube, and that fact alone gave the developers far more freedom with what they could do with the formula, and the final result ended up being what many fans consider to be the best game in the series. And I just so happen to be among that crowd. So, without further ado, let's dive into the intricate lore of Super Monkey Ball 2. I'm telling you now, when it comes to video game stories, Final Fantasy better watch its back. Yeah, I'm not fibbing. There's actually a story mode in this entry containing nearly half an hour's worth of cutscenes, tying all the stages to a narrative. I want to talk about this story for a bit, because it's one of those things that when described, sounds like I'm just blabbering about nothing. But believe me, it's real, and America is a proper country for it. If you don't want this masterclass in storytelling spoiled for you, for the two people that care, or you just want to hear me talk about the stuff that actually matters, that being the gameplay, you can skip to this timestamp at your convenience. To everyone else, it's time for me to enlighten you. Our journey begins on Jungle Island, where all the monkeys are peacefully strolling outside. I live in Arizona, can't relate, you burn to death the second you leave your home. But panic quickly erupts as a giant blimp flies over the island, run by the nefarious mad scientist, Dr. Bad Boon. Toshihiro Nagoshi should have won a Nobel Peace Prize for that pun. He uses a vacuum to suck up all the Dole brand bananas to keep for himself. This wouldn't have happened if they just invested in Chiquita instead. Naturally, Ai and friends are not happy about this and tell Dr. Bad Boon to kill himself. And he says that the only way to get the bananas back is by finding them in the devious mazes he built. And thus the monkeys do a Sailor Moon transformation and fly up in their magic balls to take on his challenge. Or you could just fly into the blimp and take the bananas that way. You're wasting your Tuesday. From that point forward, you'll play through 10 different worlds and you'll get a new set of cutscenes for each world you complete. And every single one of these feel like random cartoon episodes that when all stitched together form one giant adventure, and the writers clearly show no boundaries. As soon as we get to World 2, the plot goes from, I want bananas, to, I put a bomb inside of a volcano to sink the island. I knew something was missing from Wii Sports Resort. This whole thing is essentially just a constant chase to put a stop to every evil plan Bad Boon cooks up. Oh, and he also has the hots for Mimi for some reason, and demands her hand in marriage, even attempting to give her a massage while stuck inside of a whale. This man is the personification of a forum mod having to put up with the consequences of their actions. And that isn't even the most unhinged part. He later shrinks all the monkeys with a laser beam, and then threatens to cook them alive if Mimi doesn't say yes to the marriage, prompting her to fly up into his nostrils, making him sneeze them all away. They're gonna need at least a dozen baths to clean all that off. Oh yeah, did I mention that he takes a bath after that? You know, I take back what I said about the forum mod thing, because that would imply that they clean themselves, but still, Sega, censor this! There are kids watching! So the gang's plan to grow back to normal size is to go into Dr. Bad Boon's clothes and tickle him until he gives in. So this is what a realistic depiction of a panic attack looks like. They grow back to normal, II beats up a bunch of robot lookalikes, and in a last-ditch effort, Dr. Bad Boon goes to space to shoot a massive laser that'll make all bananas taste like curry forever. So that explains my irritable bowel syndrome from last time. And so the monkeys fly into the center of the space colony and manage to blow it up just by using the power of Poo. If only it was that easy in Sonic Adventure 2. At that point, Dr. Bad Boon finally gives up and the maze's gate opens up. And thus, all the monkeys can finally throw a dance party and enjoy their dull bananas in peace.
Clap your hands! Stamp your feet! Shuffle! Everybody!
That was amazing. Like, I know that I was poking fun at this story a whole lot, but I'm pretty sure that Amusement Vision was aware of how dumb this all was, and just decided to go the extra mile to make this as entertaining as possible. They go to some of the most extreme lengths that you could take a narrative where all logic is completely thrown out the window in favor of just having pure fun. Is it Shakespeare? No, of course not, but not every story needs to be on that level. It certainly could be better. Some of the dialogue can be pretty expository, especially when it's going over info that you already know. And yeah, the whole creepy supervillain love shtick would have had a lot more controversy if done today compared to 2002. But at the end of the day, you just don't see stuff like this happening very often from major studios. And if you can buy into this weird premise and accept the cheesy writing, I think this is a story that can resonate with you. Oh yeah, and they also packaged a whole video game in here as well, so I should probably talk about it. Alright, on to the gameplay, and it reminds me of another video game I played before. The one with the spheres or something? Oh yeah, Super Monkey Ball! There really isn't anything widely changed about the core of the game compared to its predecessor. You're still moving the stage around to guide your monkey to the goal without falling off or running out of time, while collecting bananas to gain extra lives and boost your high score, all by tilting the control stick as precisely as possible. All that remains the same, and it still feels just as good as it did in the first game. The main difference here comes down to the level design, which has received a drastic overhaul. And depending on who you talk to, that could be seen as either a good or a bad thing. In the first game, stages were typically small and flat, relying on a lot of thin paths and sharp turns that require pinpoint precision to get across. A handful of stages do get a bit more experimental, but by and large, this was the general template. But Super Monkey Ball 2 opts for much larger stages that are far more elaborate, and in some cases, actually make the mini-map useful to look at from time to time so you know where you're going. Momentum and velocity are the core focus now, and actively encouraged, as almost every stage starts you on a straightaway with no obstacles, allowing you to quickly build up a ton of speed that can last you through the entire stage should the design cooperate. And the camera has also been repositioned so that your monkey is lower on the screen, which I assume was done to make the obstacles ahead of you easier to see, and the fact that you won't be traveling down skinny paths nearly as much here. And this new style of level design leads to far more creative stage concepts. In the first game, each difficulty would have a handful of stages that shared ideas from other difficulties, and generally just expanded on them, to the point where they can kind of blend together if you squint at them. But here, that's few and far between. There's no mistaking one stage for another, and it helps that they're all given their own names this time around, making them far easier to remember. No longer do we have to call our favorite stage Advanced 21. No, brother, it's all about pro skaters now. I feel like someone should make a video game with that title someday. According to Google, totalitarianism is a system of government that is centralized, dictatorial, and requires complete subservience to the state. But I think that's just an AI-generated definition. What it actually is the Super Monkey Ball 2 level where you have to avoid getting crushed by giant rings on pillars. I swear, people try to force politics into everything these days. Oh, and shoutouts to URL in particular. A stage that was only made to advertise Amusement Vision's website that doesn't even exist anymore. I can't wait to play the next Super Monkey Ball game where they try to sell me on the BlackBerry smartphone. Surely that won't die in 2 or 3 years' time. On top of all of this, they also add some new mechanics to make the stages feel even more fresh. Specifically seesaws, switches, and wormholes. Let's talk a bit more about those last two. Switches work kind of like a remote control, as pressing them changes how the moving parts of a stage function, usually by altering the speed of them, or freezing them entirely. Truth be told, I'm really not into this gimmick. They don't add that much to the gameplay, and more so just slow the game's pace down. And a handful of stages just start by having you land on a fast forward switch, and you have to go backwards just to have everything move at normal speed, which can cost you a good few seconds of time. It gets tedious really fast. And then there's this stage called Switch Inferno, which has dozens of switches on the ground, and you have to just pick the one that brings up the goal, or else you're getting blasted out of there. I wouldn't call it unfair since they never shuffle which switch you have to go on, but for someone playing this stage for the first time, they're practically guaranteed to run into issues through no fault of their own. And that's just straight up bad level design. This is thankfully the only stage in the game that does this though. Now there are a couple of stages that use switches in novel ways, like this one where you have to cross a bunch of letters that spell out the word invisible, hence the stage's name, but you can only get across it after you hit the switch, which then makes some of the tiles invisible themselves. But neat ideas like that are few and far between, and if anything, I kind of would prefer it if switches just weren't in the game at all, as they're just more tedious than necessary. Now the other major mechanic, wormholes, are a lot more interesting. These are exclusive to Expert Mode, and they're essentially metal gates that when rolled into, will send you out the other. These aren't used too much, and half of the time they're just used to send you to a higher plane that you could have just started the stage on. And that's a shame, because the few times they're used creatively are really neat, and add a unique flair to the speedy portions of the game. Charge is my favorite stage that uses these, as it requires you to build up enough speed to bounce off of one of 2 tiny ramps in order to make it across a giant gap. And since there's 2 wormholes lined up in a straight line, you could just constantly go through them without much hassle as an easy way to maintain that speed. It's genuinely one of the coolest concepts I've seen for a stage. And in general, yeah, I love the new type of stage design here. I could definitely see why someone would prefer the first game's more narrow design, and my coordination skills are at a point where I can better appreciate that style. But the sheer amount of variety on display and the freedom you have to move around at your own pace makes this game's stages far more compelling and memorable for me. It just throws new ideas at you constantly, rarely ever reusing them outside the big 3 I just talked about, and most of them flow so naturally with the frantic gameplay. But in my opinion, the best stages are the ones that reward both your speed and precision, ensuring that your momentum is on the mind while still being careful with how you use it. Take the stage 8 Bracelets as an example. If you've never seen it before, you're probably thinking to yourself, you know what, I think I'm allergic to circles. But as you slowly get into a good rhythm and figure out how to properly align yourself on the bracelets while maintaining enough speed to keep going across them, it's one of the most satisfying feelings I can think of, since it's a one-of-a-kind challenge that feels rewarding to get through instead of unfair. None of the stages feel unfair, quite frankly, although there is a bit of an asterisk when I say that, specifically when it comes to the stages with moving parts. Mad Shuffle, I think, is a great example of a moving stage done right, as you're required to get across 2 long platforms that move in rotation and will change directions every few seconds. But the pattern is easy to get down if you're paying attention, and as a result, makes this an approachable and fun challenge. But then there's a stage like air hockey, where the goal is inside a giant cube that's constantly moving thanks to a bunch of bumpers. And the cube moves so fast that you're hardly given any time to predict where it's gonna go. And hitting at the wrong angle is basically guaranteed to cost you a life. This is where that asterisk comes in, because I can't technically call the stage unfair, since, like every stage, everything moves in the same pattern every time you play it, so nothing random is happening. But since the challenge isn't easily telegraphed, it makes it feel like my victories are purely based on sheer luck, which is something I never felt about any of the stages in the first game. I hope that explains why I think this stage is poorly designed. I'm never playing air hockey ever again. Thankfully though, stages like this are few and far between, but that's not to say every other stage is fantastic. Stages like coin slots and arthropod are pretty boring since you're just waiting for an easy shot at goal thanks to the moving pieces. The bonus stages aren't as good as the first games since the bananas are much more spread out by comparison. And there are some stages like triangle holes and quick turn that clearly weren't tested properly since you could just hold straight and win. But even with these handfuls of stinkers, I still think the stage lineup here is a vast improvement over the first game. And I'd argue the difficulty curve is a lot better, as each stage just flows into the next one more naturally, without any harsh spikes that'll put your playthroughs to a halt. There's no expert 7s to worry about, so God was showing us some mercy this time. And the world themes are also a vast improvement in my opinion. Since the game has a story mode now, every world ties, albeit very loosely, into the narrative and serve a greater purpose overall. Because of that, these feel less like video game levels and more like actual lived-in places. And it helps that there are far more details in the environments than there ever was before, but again, without distracting you from the core gameplay. There are still some pretty basic themes like underwater and space, but then there's the inside of a whale and above a giant washing machine, something every gamer is allergic to, as we've already discussed. That said, my personal favorite worlds are the amusement park and the clock tower factory. They just feel so fully realized and inviting, albeit in different ways of course, with the amusement park feeling adventurous and joyful, and the clock tower feeling intense and dramatic. And both worlds just so happen to have my favorite music tracks in the game, though I ain't sleeping on that ocean theme either. There's a reason why Beethoven's been quiet since this dropped. The whole soundtrack in general is just filled with memorable tunes that have been stuck in my head ever since I started playing the game. I took a lot of percussion back in grade school and still have a heart for drumming nowadays, so the breakbeat style of rhythm combined with synths that perfectly complement the atmosphere of each world is like if my ears were being fed a tropical smoothie. Okay, saying that out loud, that analogy probably doesn't make any sense, but hopefully you get what I mean. To this day, it remains one of my favorite video game soundtracks ever. I mean, you've been hearing it throughout this entire video, so naturally you should already agree with my subjective opinion, and if you don't, you should probably stop filling your ears with cement. But easily, the best thing about the main game is the accessibility options you have. When you're playing the story mode, you're given unlimited lives, which I think is a great way to ease newcomers into the gameplay within a safe environment, since every death now costs you nothing but time. And since every stage is also available in the more standard challenge mode, aside from the final world, which actually contains exclusive levels, it really helps to train players for that mode, since obviously it takes a bit of endurance to complete dozens of stages in one go, compared to the one at a time model of the story mode. And of course, practice mode returns here as well, but no competition mode like the first game had. I was always disappointed by the exclusion. But while the story mode is great for making the game more accessible, the challenge mode also takes strides in that regard by making one simple change. In the first game, playing through the main game would net you play points that you could use to unlock minigames and then more continues for the main game afterwards. The same thing applies here, but with a twist. After you purchase all the party games, you unlock a shop where you can use your play points to purchase other goodies, one of which being extra lives. Yeah, instead of unlocking more continues, you unlock more lives per continue, until eventually you can have up to 99 lives total. So while you can't have unlimited continues and therefore unlimited lives like in the first game, the upside to this change makes it worth it. If you wanted to access the extra stages in expert mode in the first game, you had to beat the mode without using a continue. And that's the same case here as well, though this applies to all difficulties this time. And because of the option to increase your life count, this makes accessing these stages and the master stages afterwards so much easier, since you can now give yourself 2 chances on every stage instead of just 1 chance every 17. So because of that, I actually got to play the master stages this time around, and my goodness, they are not kidding when they use that word. Yeah, as it turns out, controlling a sphere on rotating spherical objects is basically what happens when you combine Coke and Mentos. A trail of disaster. And then on top of that, they decide to add extra stages to Master Mode as well, just to ensure I don't leave without some battle scars. You know, it's times like this where you just sit back and reflect on your life, and you think to yourself, man, I could have done so many amazing things with my time. I could have become an astronaut, or a firefighter. I could have started my own business. I could have traveled around the world. I could have just spent quality time with friends and family. But instead, I'm out here chucking innocent babies into the stratosphere. Like a true American patriot. But once you pull through all these challenges and manage to get to the final level, that being the Nintendo GameCube itself, to prove once and for all that you are indeed a Purple Lunchbox fan, and you finally beat it, your reward is that you now get to be Super Monkey Ball 2's best friend. Oh, if God don't got me, I at least know that Super Monkey Ball 2 has my back. Alright, I think I've talked more than enough about the main game and why it's the objectively best game ever made, so let's talk about the party games, also known as the 2nd to 13th objectively best games ever made. The minigame section from the first game is completely gone, and everything's just been absorbed into the party games category now, which I think makes sense, as it makes things less complicated. All 6 of the party games from Super Monkey Ball return here, alongside 6 brand new ones, making for 12 in total. The developers might as well just cater a dinner party for me at this point. Monkey Race, Fight, Billiards, and Bowling are basically the same as they were before, just with a couple extra modes, so I'm not going to waste my time talking about them here. Although I will say, I spent a surprising amount of time playing the new 8-ball mode in Billiards, where you have to sink either all solids or all stripes before the 8-ball. This was and still is my go-to way to play Billiards, and taught me to fear the number 8. Now, you know how much I adore Monkey Target if you watched my original video. I think it's one of the most in-depth and fun side games in any multiplayer title. Trying to get as many points as possible by landing precisely on the targets on top of using help items and dealing with the Wheel of Danger make it infinitely replayable. However, while the general gameplay remains the same in Monkey Target 2, the design was changed quite heavily. And I'm sad to say that it's kind of a downgrade. Do I think it's bad now? No, the core of what made this mode fun is still here, but there's just a lot of little things that add up that make this a much weaker experience for me. For one, the targets themselves just aren't as interesting. The first set of targets is fine, but the second and third only feature a single target to land on that's a lot more thin and bland, without any form of elevation or moving parts. Then there's the fact that you don't get to select helper items before rounds anymore, and now you have to pick them up while you're flying. And you're basically guaranteed to not fly far or high enough to get the best items unless you just regularly partake in drowning. And the Wheel of Danger? What Wheel of Danger? The only Wheel of Danger I've ever heard of in my life is when you get bankrupt in Wheel of Fortune. And on top of all of that, you can only play a maximum of 6 rounds instead of 15, so the experience just ends up feeling short-lived. There are still good things here. Everyone gets to play at the same time in multiplayer instead of taking turns, which is nice. And there's a cool alternate mode where you can control 5 monkeys at the same time that changes up how you approach landing. But yeah, Monkey Target 2, while still enjoyable, ain't exactly the bucket list item the original was, I hate to say it. And then there's Monkey Golf 2. Now, if you remember from last time, my reaction to Monkey Golf was a strong but now with this version of Monkey Golf, my reaction is a strong Man, for how much I hated Monkey Golf before, I'm genuinely stunned by how much I liked Monkey Golf 2. No longer were you playing mini golf if it was designed by someone who had no idea what mini golf was, and instead we're playing the type of golf your grandparents would be proud of. It's about as traditional of a golf experience you can get, and the controls were not super in-depth. There's no way to do a topspin or backspin, for instance. Still give you everything you need when it comes to planning shots and hitting the ball effectively. Why yes, I too enjoy making these monkeys motion sick. The holes themselves aren't exactly winning points in the creativity department, but at the very least, they feel playable and enjoyable. There are still a couple of holes that make me consider taking therapy to handle my anger management issues, but that's only the case for 3 of them now, instead of more than half, so whatever. But yeah, overall, they did it! They made combining monkeys and golf work! I didn't think they had it in them. But now we have 6 exciting brand new party games to talk about, with the first one being Monkey Boat! I think I have arthritis. Monkey Boat is essentially Monkey Race again, but on water. Now, if Monkey Race had controls that were too stiff to make for a smooth experience, Monkey Boat has controls that are too stiff to make for a smooth experience, and they cause physical pain. You have to constantly mash the L and R triggers to paddle with your oar. L to go right, R to go left. And as it turns out, doing that with massive analog triggers is far from the most comfortable thing in the world. Combine that with physics that feel like the game's about to break on me, and items that are more obnoxious than Mario Kart's blue shell ever was, and we have a recipe for the worst monkey boat of all time. It's also the only monkey boat of all time, but regardless, that's something you never want to be. Okay, that's admittedly a bit harsh. Truth be told, Monkey Boat isn't awful and can be enjoyable once you learn the controls well, but does ask a lot from you compared to the other party games. It's certainly more playable than Super Mario Kart, I'll definitely give it that. I really need to take my fury out on innocent people, and luckily Monkey Shot delivers on that urge. Have you ever played any of those light gun games at the arcade where you go from room to room to shoot down enemies? This is basically just that. Defeat the robots, deflect their projectiles, and stock up on ammo before finally beating the monster of the week. This game is particularly challenging, but pretty fun. It really forces you to keep your eyes locked on everything on the screen so that you don't get destroyed by a weapon you didn't see coming. And for such a cartoony game, I love how oddly realistic the guns and bullets are. If this baby was locked and loaded normally, the story mode would have been over in seconds. But since these guys are just robots, locking in on them isn't technically illegal. These monkeys may be wild, but they do have morals. Next is Monkey Dogfight. You know, I was watching Top Gun Maverick in the theaters and was thinking, this is great and all, but why aren't the missiles pineapples? I'll take 20. Okay, this mode is just flat out raw. The mode where boys become men, monkeys become gorillas, and Americans pump their fists at the pure patriarchy on display. The goal is to use bullets and pineapples to knock down the health bars of your opponents to score as many points as you can before time runs out, or just send them to monkey heaven if you're playing survival mode. The bullets are unlimited, so there's no downside to just spamming them, while the pineapple missiles are limited resources but will do a ton of damage, to the point where a single one can make or break a game. So it's important to have a healthy supply for ammo, and for the picnic after the fact. The controls can be a little clunky to get the hang of, as while you can change how fast you fly, turning is slow enough so that you can't exactly stay on an opponent's tail very easily. But I feel like this was a deliberate choice for the thrill of keeping your eyes locked into the action without netting a cheap win. It's weird, I don't typically think about Monkey Dogfight being a standout mode, but man, it's one of the most thrilling experiences you can get out of such an unexpected place. And the music? Well, let's just say I know why I'm playing at my next rave. Alright, 3 more party games to go, these ones being more centered around standard sports fare, starting with Monkey Soccer, and I think I'm watching a Rube Goldberg machine gone rogue. I legitimately don't remember soccer controlling so weirdly, as this basically counters what everything about Super Monkey Ball has taught me. It's a game about momentum. When you're moving, the ball is going to react naturally and keep rolling. But here, you just always move at a fixed speed and stop on a dime, which, yeah, is objectively better for a game like soccer, but doesn't feel optimized for the game's engine, resulting in a very finicky experience that I really don't get much joy out of. Basically what I'm trying to say is, I'm not fit for the FIFA World Cup. Now Monkey Baseball, on the other hand, this certainly qualifies me for the MLB World Series. This was easily my brother and I's favorite mode back in the day, and I'm happy to report that still holds up now. And that's because it takes the baseball formula and puts a really unique twist on it that works well with the mechanics of Monkey Ball. You spin a wheel at the beginning of every inning, which will determine the field's shift, or more specifically, the effects of pockets and positions of jump boards. See, instead of moving from base to base normally, you want the ball to land into either of these two things. The pockets will determine how many bases you move or if you just get out, although you can still get out just by running into the fielders. And the jump boards will net you an instant home run as the monkey goes flying into the sky. I wonder how folks outside the field would react to such an event. The hills are alive with the sound of monkeys falling at 400 miles per hour. This right here is the monkey target of this game for me. It's a creative take on baseball that fits the arcade style of Super Monkey Ball to a T. Literally! It isn't overly complicated, but has tons of little gameplay elements that all pile up to make for a simple and thrilling baseball experience. And that's before touching on the sound design, which may just be the best in all the party games for creating such an exciting and punchy atmosphere. If you put any of these jingles in a baseball movie, the impact would be so much greater. I'm telling you now.
High fly ball into right field. She is.
And the last party game of the lot is Monkey Tennis. I give up. And that's a wrap on Super Monkey Ball 2. It's been an absolute joy to revisit this game, as it's just a gift that keeps on giving. It does basically everything a good sequel should do. Take the foundation of the original game, expand on it, and make it even better than it was before. I will say that I don't think the gap in quality between 1 and 2 is as wide as I initially thought, and I could easily see someone preferring one or the other, but at least for me, when it comes to the stage design, presentation, and overall feel of the game, 2 simply just can't be topped. Sure, there are some stages where the execution falls flat, but the good ones are so good and so creative that they make the weak ones easy to forget. It's also surprisingly ahead of its time in a number of ways. I'm sure you've noticed the game covering nearly the entire screen, and no, I haven't been stretching the footage out like a madman. This is one of the very few GameCube titles that actively supports a widescreen display. The console does act like it's in 4:3, so it's still technically stretching the pixels and just giving you a better field of view, but I personally never took issue with it. It still looks really clean. The story mode is a fun and silly novelty, the skill ceiling is more approachable and more satisfying, the party games have so much work put into 2/3 of them that you could just have a blast with these and ignore the rest of the game if you really want to. And just like before, the easy-to-learn, hard-to-master gameplay courtesy of Bushnell's Law is expertly tuned here, making for an infinitely replayable game. I still go back to replay this game every couple of years, and that'll very likely remain the case until I'm ripped away from this scorching hot earth. If Super Monkey Ball felt like an arcade game brought into your living room, Super Monkey Ball 2 feels like an arcade game made for your living room, if that makes any sense. This is my favorite game Sega's ever published and will probably always be. If you loved the first Super Monkey Ball, I highly encourage you to give 2 a shot if you haven't already. If you haven't played the first Super Monkey Ball, I'd still say 2 is a good starting point, as the quality of life options and more open-ended level design make for a more forgiving entry to try out. And if you didn't like the first Super Monkey Ball, I'm not really sure if 2 will change your mind, but you still might become a fan should the bigger stages appeal to you. Oh yeah, and just like before, speedrunners go bananas with this game. I honest to God hope these people see their families sometimes. But what if you don't have a GameCube and want to play this game on other hardware and you just don't like good things coming into your life? Well, in 2005, Sega would publish Super Monkey Ball Deluxe on the Xbox and PlayStation 2. This essentially takes both Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2 and combines them into a single game, meaning that you'll find yourself playing through much longer campaigns using the stages from 1 and 2 alongside new levels that are only in this version. By default, this should easily be the definitive Super Monkey Ball experience, but I've played it and I'm not really a fan. It mainly comes down to the controls. Instead of the octagonal cutout of the GameCube's control stick, the sticks on the Xbox and PS2 controllers are smooth as butter, so you can't easily lock to a certain position like you could on GameCube, which is pretty important for a precision-based game with 360 degrees of movement. The new levels here just aren't that good either, as they're usually just really big and long without substance or interesting challenges. Plus, since the game uses Monkey Ball 2's engine, you're forced to play the first game's stages with 2's higher camera, making crossing thin pathways a lot harder. Doesn't help that the level design of 1 and 2 don't really mesh together that well. And then the sound design when you're rolling is vastly inferior. On GameCube, you constantly hear the satisfying sound of your ball rolling that changed dynamically depending on your speed. But on Deluxe, what's a sound design? But easily the worst crime that Deluxe makes is that they removed the dull branding from the bananas. How am I supposed to enjoy my Super Monkey Ball game without my duel? Now, admittedly, you could still get by perfectly fine playing the Xbox version of Deluxe, but the PS2 version... This was given to the developers of Sonic Colors Ultimate. You're given much lower quality textures, some of the stages are just flat out missing textures, the game only runs at 30 frames per second instead of 60, and the loading times are so unacceptable that they had to program a loading screen made specifically for this version. That's embarrassing, honestly. It's still technically playable, but I can only recommend this version if you literally have no other options. That is assuming you're concerned about serving a decade in prison, of course. Because there's actually a fan-made mod of Super Monkey Ball 2 that ports the deluxe campaigns into the GameCube version, and it's worked really well from my experience. So if you're a hardcore Monkey Ball fan that's into emulation and modding, I highly recommend checking it out if you're interested. And you know what? There's even an entire community making ROM hacks of Super Monkey Ball 2, making custom levels. And there's some truly impressive stuff out there, but hey, you didn't hear that from me. Finally, in 2021, the first 2 games would get the full-on remake treatment in the form of Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, but I'll save that story for another day. In July of 2005, after Sega went through a massive restructure, the Amusement Vision name would be officially retired, and the company would continue as the New Entertainment Research and Development Department, before getting renamed again in 2011 to what we now know as Ryuga Gotoku Studio. Since then, their focus would shift towards making games for the much more mature Yakuza / Like a Dragon franchise, with Super Monkey Ball becoming much more of a side project. And from that point forward, the series would fall into quite a bit of a dark age, and I plan to dive really deep into that subject, as next time I tackle this series, I'll be covering an entry that wasn't even made by New Entertainment and tried to push the series in a much more ambitious and open-ended direction with 2006's Super Monkey Ball Adventure. This will be an interesting one to revisit for me. I remember liking it as a kid, but I could always tell there was something off about it, and I plan to figure out what exactly that is. So I'll see you then when I cover it. Bye!